Nigeria has a population of 140 million people. There is a vision of universal basic education for all 70 million children in Nigeria. But this is a huge challenge. After decades of neglect, the education system is in crisis. But there is progress.
Good evening. It takes 5 things to make a good school.
Teachers, community, resources, environment, leadership.
How can we ensure Nigeria's children get the education they deserve? On our panel this evening, Dr. Sani Ahmed Sufi, Acting Permanent Secretary in the Federal Ministry of Education. Amina Ibrahim, Special Advisor to the President on Nigeria's Millennium Development Goals. Kwara State Reforming Commissioner for Education, Bolaji Abdullahi, Independent Education Consultant, Ngiyan Fese, and Otive Iguzo, the Director of ActionAid, Nigeria. I want to begin this evening by looking at the desperate shortage of facilities in many schools and how it affects teaching and learning.
At the nomadic school, Geya Haruna is teaching English.
Audu and Sarah of Team Travel, they like going to big cities.
Geya has written a letter to the local government education secretary.
Sir, letter of request. On behalf of the Parent Teachers Association of the above-named school, we write to inform the authority that the school need your assistance of the following items because the school is yet to develop so that the Fulani will be encouraged to send their children to the school.
So, this is a letter from your school.
Request, yes, sir.
You have listed various requests here.
Yes.
You want exercise book. You need additional teachers.
Really?
You also need additional teacher.
I'm only...
You also require construction of classes. How many?
4.
You require 4 classrooms in that school. No, the other issues like the building of classroom, like the provision of books. These ones are things that the government have to do. And even uniform. Already the Kaduna State government has taken over the supply of uniform to our primary school pupils. Only that it has not gotten to their turn, but it will reach their turn.
Okay, sir.
And I believe by the time their turn comes, all the pupils in that schools will be supplied with uniform.
I submitted a written document here to them to assist, but there was no any response. This time, as I assuming they may likely assist, according to the statement they made.
As a teacher without a single desk in his school, he is determined to bring about change.
Our first question is from Abosede Ogini. She is head teacher at the Apostolic School in Offa, Kwara State.
I have 1,204 pupils in my school. Only 42 teachers and 9 classrooms. I have heard many times that things will improve, but they don't. Why is this?
Commissioner Abdullahi.
I've been a commissioner for over a year now in Kwara, and I've traveled around the state, and what I see as the level of infrastructure, especially in primary school, is quite appalling. And the one question I never cease to ask is, how did we allow things to degenerate to this level? Because for the level of decay that I see around me, I wouldn't have taken less than 15 years, to get to that level. So you ask yourself, how did we work things to get to that level? So you find that to correct what we have on the ground now will probably take another 15, 20 years.
How did we get to this point, Otive?
There are a lot of reasons why we got to this point. The funding to the education sector has either been static or at some point was very low. In fact, across the 3 levels of government, local government, state government, and federal government. That is one major reason why we have that degeneration. And I think secondly is the challenge of effective utilization of the resources that are even budgeted to deal with these challenges. The question of corruption, the question of transparency and accountability.
Let me go to Amina Ibrahim. There's question of corruption, accountability.
Big question. It's one that we've been dealing with since I think we've had another chance at democracy. And it's one that we put on the front burner in everything that we're doing. And it's all through the 3 tiers of government. When we look at the programs that we handle at the federal level, we look to see that the systems themselves, whether you're talking about government or the school or the contractors or the parents and teachers, there is a governance and accountability problem. And I think that this is one of the biggest challenges that we've had to face, is how do we put back the checks and balances in a system that used to work. We've heard everybody's background in terms of quality education one had in the 60s and 70s. So it used to work. It's got down to a level where it's quite unbelievable for many of us who came from a system that worked to see. To put that back together again,
Thank you, Amina.
it's an enormous challenge.
We can see that teachers are affected by a lack of resources. Many have been on strike across the country. We asked some of them in Kwara State why they stopped working.
The money they are giving us is not enough. Our salary is not up to what we are supposed to be given.
We felt that we are being cheated.
Please, we are teachers. Who made them what they had today? Without teachers, there will not be a doctor, there will not be a lawyer, there will not be a president.
Dr. Sufi, are teachers justified by being unhappy?
Well, certainly there are a lot of grievances. Teacher grievances is not something that has started today. Even in the 60s and 70s, there has been grudges by teachers that they are not being given what they ought to have been given, judging by the kind of responsibility that are vested on them. And certainly sometimes their unhappiness is not so much because of what they earn in terms of salaries and allowances. Sometimes the working conditions are just not the one that they would have loved to have. And going by the existing infrastructural decay that you find mostly in public schools, that is enough for one to justify they being unhappy because the working conditions are not there. So
what is government doing about it?
Well, government, when we are talking about education, we are talking a government responsibility that is apportioned to the 3 tiers of government. But generally, through the National Council on Education, we discuss this matter. And that each state is striving hard because we have a national working plan, and each state is striving to achieve the conditions which will guarantee effective learning in their schools.
We have a teacher in our midst here. Chris Yosa, what do you feel about what you've just heard?
I feel that the people at the helm of affair are not doing so much okay as they explain. I think they can do better. They can be a bit more serious. Do a bit more than what the government has put on the ground for you to work with. I mean, go a step further. That is, press yourself. Try to see that in your position, the funds that are directed for this purpose are used like that. Don't let it go without questioning or asking a question here and there. Why is this so? Why is this so? Because as far as I'm concerned, I think many of them come across this decay and just walk away quietly.
So how do we improve things for teachers? How do we move on? Nguyen Fese.
I think that the first place to start is to look at the incentive structure. Because if you look at the primary schools, for instance, most of them are in the rural areas. And if you look at the utilization of the qualified teachers, you'd see that they are not evenly distributed. And some of the schools have high numbers of trained teachers, while others don't have. And those ones have to travel long distances to difficult terrain, work with children under very, very difficult situations. So if we look at the incentive structure, maybe for those who are in the rural areas, think about housing, think about, certain things, farmland, and things that would make them want to stay within the school or within the environment to stay and teach. And for those who are in the city centers also, to look generally at the working conditions. What do they need? Do they have enough working materials? Do they have enough teaching aids, for instance? Do they have enough training and retraining, opportunities like that for growth? What are the prospects for career development, for instance? So these are the issues that we need to look at.
In all the countries of the world where progress has been made in terms of education, you'll find that teaching profession is one of the most respected professions, and they are well paid. But the entry point is also very important. How do people get to become teachers? So if we are able to tighten the entry point and make sure that you are competent to be a teacher before you become a teacher, then there's a legitimacy for us to begin to argue for the best of pay for teachers. But if in the first place, you became a teacher just because you know somebody or because you couldn't find something else to do and somebody asked you to teach, and you teach children for 6 years, they cannot write their names, then the same teacher is now saying that he must be paid the same thing that doctors have been paid or engineers have been paid. And there's a problem there. So I'm saying that we shouldn't take the issue of, yes, we should pay teachers very well, but there are a lot of other things, policy issues we must tackle.
I'd like to put this point to Dr. Abdul Rahman Umar of NTI, the institute that takes care of teachers' training in Nigeria.
I think there is no doubt in anybody's mind that the quality of education has deteriorated considerably from what we used to know it in the 60s. I went to primary school in the 60s, finished in 1972. So I know that if taking something as, let's say, the level of literacy and numeracy of graduates of primary school in 1970 and what you have today, they are different. I mean, the quality has deteriorated. And there are reports, studies done by the Ministry of Education that indicates that in literacy and numeracy, we have been doing very, very badly. In fact, a World Bank survey of 20 African countries showed that Nigeria was at the bottom of the heap. Our mean score for literacy was a mere 30%. Countries like Niger, Tunisia, and what have you, were doing far better than us. So in terms of quality, yes, quality has deteriorated. But the important thing is why and what are we going to do about it? One reason is the declining level of commitment to education on the part of all levels of government for a considerable period of time, particularly under the military. And our colleagues here, the panelists and people here have mentioned lack of facilities, poor teacher motivation, teacher pay, and so on. These are all factors that contributed to the declining levels of quality of tuition being provided in our schools. But we cannot address them without addressing the issue of teacher quality.
Amina Ibrahim, would you want to be a teacher in Nigeria today?
I think being a teacher is much about the vocation for being one. So if you ask me that question, I'll say yes, because I want to be able to put my best foot forward and, as she says, build people. She wants to see them in different places later in life. But I think that the circumstances that teachers are in today are very difficult. They're not, by and large, justified. But the Commissioner mentioned that it took quite a while to see us at this level of decay. And to get back to where we need to be, we in government need to have a plan for that.
So, are there parents in the audience who have a point to make specifically about the quality of education they feel their children are receiving?
Now, the Commissioner seems to lay blame on teachers for not being qualified to be teachers before becoming teachers. I want to object to that. It shouldn't be the entry point. If the government is blaming the teachers for not being qualified before becoming teachers, I think I would blame the government for not checking that before becoming a teacher, you must be qualified. It's an indictment on the government.
My blame goes to the president, because if the president, Dr. Musa Yar'Adua, a lecturer then or a teacher then, is now ruling us and he came into government without doing anything about education, I think the blame should go to him because he has been there. He knows what is happening in our schools. So he's supposed to have, that should have been his first project when he came into government, but nothing has been done about it.
Amina Ibrahim, you are the president's special advisor. How do we connect this?
The president always gets the blame. He is the leader in this country, but it's clear that the Federal Ministry of Education has been doing things in education since he's assumed power. So has the office that I work with, which is responsible for debt relief. The largest amount of money that we've spent in 2007 from the president's office has been on education. And it's been on teacher quality. It's been on in-service training. It's been on the provision of improving training facilities in the colleges of education. So I think that he has done specific things, but I think what he's done more about is to take a step back and look at the responsibilities of each tier of government and try to apportion them correctly. I think very clearly levels of responsibility and are we addressing where there are gaps and putting pressure through the platforms that we have at the federal level to say, state governments, local government chairmen, you need to pull up and face your responsibilities with the resources that you have to address basic education.
I want to move on now to talk about some more specific challenges faced in our country.
Sunusi Mohammed is a deputy principal at Chiromawa.
Culturally, or I can say religiously, our girls used to be married at the early stage of their lives. So whenever they come to school, they have, it has already been inculcated in their mind that their place in the society is always at their husband's house. So they have that in mind. Actually, this marriage scene is one of the problems that is hindering their getting good education.
Jibril Haruna is doing the class roll call.
Aisha M. Abubakar. Sir. Samira Munkaila. Marriage?
Yes.
Maimuna Musa. Marriage?
Yes.
Samira Munkaila. Marriage?
Yes.
Khadija Abdullahi. Marriage?
There are about 15 students married out of 57.
And our second question is from Dr. Suleiman Adejiron, former chairman of the Oyo State Primary Education Board.
4 million girls are not in school who are supposed to be in school, ages 6 to 11. Yet we know that the education of the girl child is very critical to social transformation. If you have to sustain your workforce, the woman is important. What can we do? What are we doing?
Dr. Sufi.
It is true that out of the between 9 to 10 million school-age children that are in school, about 4 million are girls. And the major reason has to be with a lot of factors. One, there is just large number of school-age children, whether they are boys or they are girls, that are not in school, of which we are addressing. But specifically, the girls tend to, even when they do participate in education at the primary school, they used to withdraw. They cannot complete the cycle. Poor families find girls that they can use to sell things for them and get money for the sustenance of the family. Education is on the concurrent list. The local government, the state and the federal government, they are all stakeholders in this, and we can only achieve success if all the 3 tiers of government agree to work on a plan of action. Each one carrying on its own responsibilities. Last year, the Federal Ministry of Education, through an intervention, we spent almost R1 billion on girl child education through the MDG. in order to look at these problems which are hindering participation of girls in school and make them to get attracted.
Come back to you, Dr. Adjediron. How would you respond to what you've heard?
Community involvement is, for me, even much better than at the government level because they own the schools. So if they monitor how the money comes in, they monitor the teachers, they even monitor parents, then I think we'll get better results. But if you leave everything to government sitting in Abuja or say in the capital city, and there is a school so many kilometers away, how do you get the girls to the school? So I think there must be this demand from the community.
We'll go on to talk more about community participation after this break. Welcome back to Nigeria School. Community participation in schools is another criteria in the list of what makes a good school. So is leadership. But creating a good educational environment is expensive. Many parents feel that money is not being well spent.
Sanusi and Principal Yandua have arranged a parent-teachers meeting to discuss the challenges facing the school. Nafisa's father has come to his first ever school meeting.
Kamar gurin tsuguno yanzu na tabbatar a cikin nan naku idan da ainihin bawali zai kama wani sai ya tai faman diridirin inda zai zaga. Ya kamata idan an tashi kafin mutum ya tafi ije duba ainihin a yadda muke koyawa ƴaƴanku karatu.
Kayayyakin aiki wadda ake cewa instructional materials irinsu ba zai taba ilimi ba zai taba gudana in ba da su ba. To amma sai mu ɗauki lokaci ba mu samu irin wa'annan abubuwa daga gurin gwamnati ba. Kaga akwai buƙatar irin wannan tare